Hey everyone, this is Ete with another episode of The Company Next Door. Today I am sitting here with my good friend Dee Downing here in Park City, Utah. We're in her awesome home and we're just taking some time out on a snowy day. Dee, thank you for taking some time and chatting with us. How are you doing?
You are most welcome and I'm honored.
So thanks, Dee. I'm really excited about this episode because Dee is someone I met 7, 8 years ago. I guess we met as work acquaintances is kind of how it started here in Park City. One of the things that we have in common, and I've learned a lot from her, is her values, the reason she does business, the reason and the way she goes about things. And I love it and I'm intrigued by it. And there's just a lot that we can all learn from it. It's been very helpful to me as a business owner. And so I'm hoping we can capture some of that, tell her story, and share some of that in this interview today. So her company is called Red Ant Works. And how do you classify it? Is it a full landscape company, or what's the classification?
Well, I'm a licensed contractor, landscape contractor, but we do have more of a systems-based approach to everything that we do. So we do design build, we do horticultural care, and other things. I have an emphasis in permaculture. So it's more of a relational way to design and build.
Yeah, and one of your focuses is just working with the environment wherever you're designing, right?
Well, what I like to do is have a conversation with the land, and then of course with the client, and then see how those two things align, so that there is less imposition on the land.
Awesome. I love it. So, and we'll get into that. We're going to talk more about the specifics of you and your team and some of the work that you're doing here. But I want to start a little bit further back, kind of from more towards the beginning. So give us a little backstory of where you came from and then how you ended up here in Park City.
I grew up in Michigan in a sugar beet town, so it was like a factory feeder, agricultural community mostly, but a feeder town to the auto industry in Michigan, way up in the thumb of Michigan, not the UP, but the thumb. And when I was in 7th grade, our Girl Scout troop trucked out to the Tetons in Yellowstone, and it absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, blew my mind, and so I just sort of I had pictures of Wyoming all over my wall instead of, teen crushes, And anyway, made my way back out here through friend of a friend's roommate's sisters, blah, blah, kind of a thing. And I just never went home. That was in 1984.
So let me ask you about that. You came from Michigan to the Tetons and just had this life-changing experience.
Yeah.
What was it that just blew your mind? What was it? Can you pinpoint it to anything, or was it the feeling, or?
Well, I think I was responding to the feeling that my body and my being were having. I mean, it was in 7th grade, so I'm sure a lot of it was, hormones or pretty powerful chemicals making our bodies wake up in all kinds of ways. But just the sheer beauty of the place, the mountains, and meeting new kinds of people, and all is one little tiny town, and then you come out and you learn all these other ways of being, as much as I could with the Girl Scouts. But there was, I wonder if it was something just vibrational in the land that I was feeling and resonant. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Isn't it curious that why we're drawn to certain places?
Yeah. And so at that time, were you just like, I need this in my life? Eventually, I want to get to live in an environment that has this type of landscape?
I knew I would come back out west for sure. But then I sort of forgot about it. I started college and did that whole thing. And then they literally needed people to come out and clean some toilets on this ranch in Wyoming. And like I said, it was a friend of a friend's roommate's sister's, kind of, way strung out how I even came to know this person. And five young women went out and everybody went back, returned home but me.
Wow. And then so here you are in Wyoming on a ranch.
Yeah.
Spending time with the earth, learning. Did you already have a love for the environment, for the earth, for permaculture, all these things prior to that? Or is this where that all was established?
Oh, wow. What a good question, Rob. Or ete.
So for those of you who may have not heard this, I have two names. So some people call me Rob Ete. I've tried to switch them, but it's a mess. So anyway.
Well, I didn't get the memo. I like ete. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I call you that?
Yeah, I'd love it.
Okay, all right. So, so no, definitely no permaculture. I mean, that would have been, I mean, it was definitely alive in Australia with David Holmgren and Bill Mollison in the 70s. But no, I didn't know anything about that. But I was always really connected to nature, you know. I remember some enchanting places I found when I was a little girl, going to the places I was told not to go in the wilds, you know, on the banks of this river behind our house. And so magical, so magical. I mean, some of that plant equisetum, you know, the plant,
Yeah.
really old plant, hasn't changed for millions of years, literally millions of years. They found fossilized versions of it. The first time I encountered her was when I was a kid in this place where my parents forbade me to go. They were just worried about the river. My father had grown up on that river, and you know, he was born in 1908. He pulled many dead bodies out of that river, so that's why. But I knew enough not to go in the river. But the plant life in this little drainage just it was enchanting. That's what it was. It was enchanting. It was like I felt like I discovered. I don't even remember saying, you know, I see fairies or anything like that, but it was definitely a feeling like that. So I've always had that, I think, conversation with nature, or awareness that there was an intelligence and a consciousness, or that nature was sentient, although I would have never used those words back then. But
Right.
I mean, I would retreat to wild places like most kids do, like lots of kids do when they can, because that's our compass. I mean, it's going home, I think.
And do you think sometimes because I think about children a lot too, as far as we're born with this creative sense, this fearlessness, and then we become who we become, but sometimes we get detached and removed from whatever it may be. But in this case, we're talking about nature. Do you think that's happened on a large scale right now? Like, do you think a lot of us came from that place and some of us are trying to get back? I know I am right now. Do you think that's happening?
Oh, that's beautiful that you're trying to get back. Well, yeah. I mean, we are raised and conditioned from the time we're into this world to be capitalists. That is our purpose. Production is our worthiness, and that's how we measure how worthy we are, is how productive we are, and what we purchase, and how many of what we purchase, and who sees it, and that's the way that children are conditioned to be in this culture. And so yes, that is the sole focus of this culture, is that we grow up to be consumers. You know, I used to play a game with my kids when they were little. I didn't let them watch much TV, but Star Trek, Next Generation. So when the commercials would come on, we would play this game, and it would be like, what are they trying to sell you?
Wow.
But here's the thing that really got them to think critically about media, and was, what are they trying to tell you, and how are they trying to do it? And so my kids, at a pretty young age, and we kept this game going until, you know, they turned into teens and stopped wanting to hang out so much, but they were able to articulate the emotions behind the commercials that they were seeing. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So, they want us to feel bad about ourselves in this way, but if I buy that thing, I'll feel better.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because I've spent quite many of the last few years in marketing, and that's one of the things you're taught, is you're really selling an emotion, right? And so it's literally planned for many companies. I'm not saying all, but that seed is planted at the beginning of manipulation. Anyway, I want to come back to this. So you're in Wyoming. You've got this love for nature. It's an escape for you. It was always in you. What happens after that, after the ranch?
Oh my gosh. Well, I never had a plan ever. I mean, I never did. That's why I'm at this point in my mid 50s now, where I'm supposed to get a plan, and I never had one. I just followed whatever lit me up. So somebody, it was the end of the season in Wyoming, somebody said, you should go to Park City. I was like, what's that? And they said, oh, it's a ski town. I was like, oh, what's that? And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. I'll go there. And I had, I think, oh, the $7 in my pocket, but that was true when I moved here. I really didn't know how to plan ahead. So I got here and I actually didn't have any money for a place to live. I had a friend that let me stay, friend of a friend let me stay in his place for a little bit. He came back into town, so I had to move out, but I would go and look at rental places, and I was homeless, and I would just leave the back door unlocked and then come back in at night, and I would sleep there. And I had those long down jackets were popular back then in the 80s as well. So I would just sleep in that, and I would not touch anything, and I would just lay down in a warm place. And so that's how I got my first start in the 80s.
That's amazing. So in the 80s in Park City,
yeah, early 80s,
you've got your long down jacket, because that's what we did in the 80s.
Yeah.
Well, I was born
and now again too.
Yeah, it's coming back, and you're just trying to survive.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to stay here. It astonishes me when I think back on that, really. But, so then I got a job. I worked on the Alpine Slide, and myself and a woman named Kathy McCarthy and I were the first women. Like you think about this now, especially up against, Me Too. And, I was told many times when I first moved here, oh, women don't do that job. And several times I was the first woman to do that job. And so I worked on the Alpine Slide. There were women that did that job, but they're taking it down. I mean, I just did whatever I could. I worked at Park West doing, up on the ski runs and prepping them for the winter. And I was a makeup artist. It's like,
okay.
Did makeup for the Egyptian every now and then, but I worked at this studio on Main Street called Belviso, and the woman there was one of my teachers.
At the time, did it feel that you were doing something important? Because like you said, these, women can't have this job. They'll never do this, right? And here you were, back in that time. Did you feel like you're on? No, it was just what you were doing.
No, I just wanted to do it. And I just was like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. How did you get from bumming around places to survive and skiing and makeup artist to Red Ant Works?
Well, I got married and had 2 kids, and then got divorced, and was kind of like, just trying to put food on the table,
Yeah.
As a typical single mom, destitution. And I knew myself well enough that if I took on a quote real job, I wouldn't be the kind of mother that I wanted to be. And so I pull weeds for people on the side, and waited tables and was a mom. And then my kids got a certain age, they into their adolescence, and they basically said, "Mom, please get a life." Out. And I said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Do you really mean that?" Because when I start this, and it wasn't called Red Ant then, but I was trying to legitimize, what I did, and make it a business. And this was back also in the 90s. But so then I, got a business license, and then I became an LLC, and
you had no business schooling, right?
No, I didn't, but I ran a company with my husband. Okay. We had and before that I worked in DC I didn't have any formal business training.
But you'd been around.
No, I was an fine arts major. Photography was my emphasis.
Because that part of business is difficult. I mean, it's often, for many people, they don't get past it. The establishing a business, the LLC, all that stuff. So did you just figure it out, or?
Yeah, I don't ever remember being challenged with it. I mean, we had our wood shop, and, I read Zig Ziglar's sales thing and sales book, and I did everything except for make the stuff that my husband did. And so I had some experience there, but I mean, it just seems like common sense. You have to make a profit, and it just came naturally to me, I guess.
Wow. Okay. So late 90s, you're starting the company. Was the first name Red Ant, or did you start operating under another name?
No, it was Red Ant, actually. I was at some agency, I remember, some place. It was probably a state place, and I needed to put the name on a piece of paper, and I was like, and it just came out, Red Ant just came out, and then I added Works later. But what's ironic about that is I have named several companies and entities, and another company I worked for, I named a division. I mean, I would go into weeks long research into languages and etymology of words, and Red Ant's been the one that's lasted the longest, and it came in a moment.
Just like that.
Just needed something for the paper.
That's awesome. So, okay, so you got Red Ant up and running. Were you doing all the work yourself in the beginning, or did you have the family involved or friends, or how did you get it going?
Yeah, well, my kids would come to, but this was before it was a business. I was just pulling weeds for a neighbor, and my kids would come with me. And I think this husband and wife, the woman had been a single mom too, and I think she saw that I was a hard worker and really, really watered me during those times. It was hard. It was hard. It was really hard being a single mom. And so my kids would come every now and again, and then every once in a while I might invite a friend to help out. But then once I decided, when my kids kicked me out of the house, not literally, then I went into like study mode, like how do you do business, how do you hire, how to get all the legal stuff. And so then I was reading a lot. I actually just came across my books that I started to give structure to the entity of Red Ant when I started hiring people.
Wow.
And then became an LLC and then eventually incorporated.
Wow, that's awesome. So how long after did you assemble your first team where you didn't have to be out on every job and you had maybe a good crew that you felt good about? How long did it take you to build that and get there?
Oh, I don't know. In the beginning years, I was on site with my crew all the time, and because I was training and doing the work. And then it occurred to me I could teach people to do what I did, but the way I would go about that, and I still do this to some degree, is I give everybody a chance to be in a leadership position. When I used to wait tables, I always thought the line cooks should come out and serve every now and then, and the servers should go be a line cook, because not in all places, but historically there would often in some establishments there'd be a lot of animosity between because they didn't know each other's jobs. And so I think it just strengthens everybody to be in a leadership position and gives people perspective. And so I don't know, it was probably 2006, something like that, where I'm on the job sites. If we're doing an installation, I'm on the job sites all day long. I have my right-hand person has been with me for 5 years, and she's just amazing at what she does. I didn't start leaving the job sites until I felt, somebody who had the skills where the quality wouldn't dip if I wasn't there.
So let me ask you this, because one thing I love about Red Ant and about the way you lead your team is, and it's inspired me personally, is how important your core values are to you, how important it is to look for something more than just money and revenue. How do you instill that into your team? How do you, if that's who you are, how do I pass that on and have my team live that way also?
It's so interesting, group dynamics, and watching, the nature of kids are just different than they were, at least in my Midwestern town, and what they bring now. And so I've had to adapt to that a lot. It's really tricky. I want to get a lot better at that, because this has happened, more than one time. But I got a great situation going. Everybody, the verve is up with the crew, and then a new person comes in, and that there's just this little seed of negativity. So it's like we can all have that. We all have the capacity to go down that road. But if there's one person, they may not even have aware of it. They're in that groove, and then it sparks a light in somebody else, and then all of a sudden there's something alive.
Yeah.
And what I've found is all you need is one person to collaborate with and commiserate with, and then it becomes a fact in the narrative of these two people. And then that negativity can kind of bleed out, So yeah, that's something I want to get a lot better with, because I had a situation last summer that I had really high hopes, and we both decided it wasn't a good match for, continuing this next year. But I don't believe he had any awareness that he had that propensity to go toward the negative. It was just a groove. And yeah, that's actually one of my intentions for this summer, is to team build I mean, that's the juice and the gold of, this time we're in, is self-awareness, and we need to get better at resolving conflict.
Yeah.
But in order to resolve conflict, some people don't even have awareness that they're angry.
Disconnected. Yeah.
They don't even know they're angry. I had a kid one summer. He was just great. He was with me for 3 years, and sit on my porch, and he was in, like I said, more of a leadership position, and I was trying to talk about something because I could see there was this agitation, and foot bouncing up and down, and shoulders up like this, fists clenched, and I said, well, I can see you've got something on your mind, and I mean, I might even say it seems like you're angry, and he went, I'm not angry, and he believed it, like he wasn't lying to me, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I want to understand more about how to work with a situation like that, because it is hard to resolve conflict when somebody just has, they don't have the self-awareness of what they're feeling. And sometimes people had to learn how not to feel to survive certain situations when they were growing up. And so I don't begrudge them for that survival mechanism, but we need to feel. We're all human. We're animals. I believe animals have emotions too, like badgers or whatever. And I think we're animals too, and I think to be fluid with those emotions and just have awareness when they, I think there's some definitely in meditation. I don't know what tradition it's from, but letting emotions pass by like a cloud. That idea that they are ephemeral, and if we can just sit long enough and feel it, and just have awareness of it, that I think in the Buddhists say it's 90 seconds or something like that it will pass. But that can be a crazy, out of control train ride when you're really pissed off or something, or sad, or
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. So you've been in business now, I don't know, 15 years. I can't do math in my head.
Yeah, it's over 20 years.
Over 20 years.
It depends on when you start counting it. But
So what has been a project or something that you just were really proud of? Has there been something where you're like, this is awesome, whether it be a job or an innovation or an idea? What are you what gets you the most excited about what you've created when you look back?
Well, just the beauty of the plants, or seeing a tree and remembering the day and how hard it was to get into place, and how much it's thriving now. So there's that legacy, and I even talked to my crews about that it's not just a work day today. We're planting legacies.
Wow.
And especially the trees and the shrubs, they can live decades or a century, if everything goes right. Or flowers, you might go back in 30 years and see maybe not the exact lavender plant that you planted, but you might see the newly seeded babies from that plant that you planted 30 years ago, and so I like to design for long term. So there's that. There's the beauty aspect of it. There's the functioning when we put in water systems and drainage systems. So the way we manage water is quite a bit different than conventional ways of managing water. And so seeing that system and seeing that water flowing in the ways that we had intended it to, that really fires me up. I was over at one of our clients, Mary and Peter Wright in Thames Canyon, and we did this sort of, oh, that's right.
Yeah, I know the property.
Yeah, and so we did this, I'd never done it before, but it seemed like it would work, and it's a really small site. We wanted to keep all the water on the site. Which we did succeed in doing, except for the driveway, which was designed before I came into the picture. But anyway, so we did this whole engineered under the soil thing, and 2 summers later, Mary and Peter called me, and I said, you got to text me when the water's running, I want to see how it works. And so I went over there. It was a torrential downpour. It was freezing cold, and I was lit up. I didn't even notice it. I was running around. It was just, I was giddy to see this system working and this water flowing.
Yeah.
And, but the other thing, I was just looking at some photographs from the Antorama from last summer. The other thing is seeing my crew proud. That really makes me happy, because they can take that with them that doesn't go away, those feelings and the pride. And not just the pride of a job well done, but of the community that you did it in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And one thing I want to point out, I've seen a lot of Dee's work. She brings me in on some jobs as a subcontractor, and some of the jobs are just incredible. Some of the ideas, some of the, even the properties, right? I mean, thinking of, I won't make a list of names, but some of the houses are spectacular. And it's just so cool. But I love that the thing that gets you the most excited is not the $10 million house with unlimited budget, but it's the tree that you planted that you drive by 15 years later.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's awesome. So being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is so hard. It pushes us to the edge at times. I think I've never had anyone disagree with that statement. What are some of the moments that you're just like, I don't know if I'm going to get through this today?
Yeah.
Can anything come, any experience or a time period or situation that comes to mind?
Well, nothing catastrophic. I mean, there have definitely been, I can call up that feeling of where it just feels, you feel awful in a split second. I can't think of a thing attached to that right now, which is probably a good thing. But I can definitely have access to that feeling and that emotion. But I think related to that, they don't happen as often. And the reason is because I've learned to not take things personally, which is, it's a cliche, but it is so true. And, you know, that doesn't mean that you might not feel disappointed for this thing or that thing, you know, that a client said to you or something that resulted or an employee, but it's not personal, you know, it really isn't. You know, it's interesting because I've had many people say that to me over the course of my life, but I've actually heard Indigenous elders from very different parts of the world say that as one of their foundational teachings. I was like, oh, wow, okay, there probably is something to this then, if that's a directive from, or a statement from people who are still in touch with the original instructions, you know, of indigeneity. And so I started really paying attention to that. And that's not to say, I mean, you know, I think it gets a little sticky. I mean, sometimes people react directly to you about something you did or said, or the way you are. So that does feel personal. But I think the thing is that, you know, we all have our narratives playing, which is something that I've been working with lately, is just questioning, what are my narratives, you know, that might not be true. The tapes and beliefs that seem real because they're frequently
In
on
our heads.
replay.
Yeah.
So that person who's very upset with you might have something that they have going on, and so just don't take it personally. And it took me a really long time, and I still, you know, I can't say that I've mastered that, but mostly things don't affect me. I don't weaponize things that other people do. I don't weaponize them towards myself, and that took me a really long time. I think it's pretty common in this culture. We're very, very, very violent to ourselves and others. And, you know, when you hear people talking poorly of others, you know you can hang your hat on the conversation they're having to themselves is way worse.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you this, because we've talked about these core values, we've talked about purpose, and just being tuned into what you're doing. So what are the core values in your company that really matter to you?
Businesses need to be profitable.
Yeah.
To stay alive. How much profit is, you know, at the discretion of the market and the business owner, you know. I don't want to be making my dollars at the cost of detriment to anybody, whether it's my employees by paying them a low wage or by overcharging my clients. And so I want to be thoughtful and conscious about the carbon footprint. You know, how can we achieve our goal, create a regenerative system, particularly with brand new landscapes, with minimal impact? And I don't want to throw anybody or any being under the bus to achieve that goal. Another problem, you know, that sort of fits into not taking things personally, there's three things that really challenged me. One was learning to not take things personally. Two, realizing, you know, talk about those narratives.
Yeah.
I didn't get it that was full of self-doubt. It was so ever present in me my entire life. I didn't know that tape was playing. until this thing happened. I was watching this other landscaping company across the street, and I saw this guy on this giant machine making a mess of things. What struck me is how confident he was. And I didn't know how to operate a machine like that, but I could certainly tell he was making all kinds of trouble for the future. And I thought, oh, how come that guy is so different than me? How come he's so certain he knows how to do this, and I'm so certain I don't? And what's that difference, you know? And so I started really working and kind of probing, you know, where are all the places doubt lives in my narrative.
Wow.
Another thing was, and I see this all the time, mostly with women, is learning to charge a fair price, fair to you and fair to the client.
Yep.
For your time. I've spent, I don't even know, 150, 200,000 in my own education. It's not, you know, I haven't done it in a conventional way, but I've traveled all over the world and studied permaculture and across, you know, all over this country, and taken my work very seriously because I think it can save lives and landscapes and ecosystems. And so I've taken that very seriously, and I've been at it over 20 years, you know, so I have a lot of knowledge, and there needs to be a fair exchange for that knowledge.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm a little surprised. I kind of had always thought you were a guru in your whole life. But what I'm hearing, because you're the most knowledgeable person I know in town, and so I just kind of thought you studied this as a kid. But I'm hearing it sound like you didn't really take it study and travel the world until what, 15, 20 years ago? I mean, did you start Red Ant and then started traveling, or?
Yeah. I didn't.
I could have thought you went to college for this and had.
No, I studied fine arts. I didn't know nothing. I always loved plants. You know, that enchanting place I told you I discovered. So there was that conversation happening, but as far as a business and a science and an art and, you know, no, I didn't do it. I mean, Red Ant, it wasn't with permaculture until I think, was it 10 years ago I found permaculture. There's this amazing conference in Monterey, California, I think it's January. It's been going on for like, golly, it must be 40 years now.
Wow.
And it's called the Eco Farm Conference. It's incredible. And so why a landscaper went to a farming conference, I don't know, but there actually was a small contingency of landscapers that were there too. It was really kind of cool. And so I went to all these, you know, different breakout sessions, and what I learned was everything, 100% of the problems that we face right now can be solved in the soil. It's all about the soil.
Yeah.
And so I'm listening to this, and I was just noticing this thread, you know, soil. And then I'm kind of thinking about it, and you know, going through the days and kind of feeling like an outsider. And then one day I was like, hey, I work with the soil. Like,
it clicked.
Yeah, I was like, hey, that's what I do. And so then I heard about permaculture, and I mean, I went home and did some research and ended up at a permaculture course for about 8 weeks later.
Can you give us a quick definition of what permaculture is? Some of my listeners will be like, what is she talking about?
Right. Yeah. You know, in the permaculture world, this is always this is like the throwdown question, because it's hard to explain, but, you know, teachers that have been teaching this stuff for decades, they have come up with some really elegant descriptions, or one sentence, like, really. So I haven't done that yet, but permaculture is a design methodology. It is most often applied to living systems, but not always. The idea is to design a system of living things where humans and other animals can reside that is regenerative and closed loop. So there are several design principles that go with permaculture, but the idea is that they're low waste or no waste in a beautiful system. We all know that there is no waste in nature. Permaculture is you design for energy storage and release is the way that I think about it most commonly, to some end. So, for example, to grow an apple, where do you store and how do you release that energy to get an apple?
So let me ask you this. Who is a good fit as a client for Red Ant? Is it people who just really interested in what you're doing with permaculture, or who's a good fit? What are you looking for in a client?
Someone who is pleasant to be around, somebody fun to work with, or someone who's really curious. I mean, they don't have to be completely in alignment with my values,
Okay.
but I'm very upfront. You know, Red Ant has a reputation of how we go about doing things. Some people come to us for those reasons because of the permaculture or the you know, people will call it, you know, I heard you do more natural landscaping.
Yeah.
But you know, that could be anything really. But some people don't want the chemicals around their house. And, you know, someone who's going to be, you know, upfront, like who just, if they have a question or they, you know, want to know what are you doing that for? And just bring it to me so that I can be responsive to it. So someone who is respectful. I mean, I need mutual respect and respect for my crew as well. When they're doing the work, my crews put so much heart into the work, or they either do or they it's not a great working.
Yeah.
I can't. It doesn't work for them at Red Ant if they can't just punch clock.
Do you ever feel, because you've been doing this for a while, you know, like we said, 15 to 20 years, and now in 2020, you know, this idea of working with nature, this idea of organic or mindful, you know, whatever, is popular. But you've been doing this and practicing this for 15, 20 years, and even still, some areas it's not popular here. Do you ever feel alone in this venture? Like, I know a lot of landscapers. I don't. You called yourself a landscaper, so I'm going to say that. I wouldn't have called you a landscaper.
What would you call me?
I don't know. I'd call you like a master gardener, expert person. I don't know. I can't. I have a hard time explaining you to other people because you're different. There's a whole different thing. That's what intrigues me. But anyway, but out of 100 landscapers, if we're going to call you that, you're different. Has that ever sat on you? Like, do you ever feel alone, like exhausted, like, man, nobody appreciates it? I've just been pushing this. I'm pioneering this type of techniques.
Yes, I mean, I was just pulling my hair out. Nobody had heard of permaculture back then, and you know, I had all these certifications and trainings, and which really doesn't matter. It's how well you execute it. But so, yes, is the answer, and I am delighted to see that that is taking hold. The thing I see, we're still compartmentalized in our thinking.
Okay.
Where, you know, I've been to organic farms that are they operate in sort of a reductionist way.
Yeah.
You know, this is this and this is this. And, you know, in some ways their hands are tied. You know, they can't be creative or
Right.
they would lose their organic certification. I mean, the rule book is astonishing, and it works against itself. You know, at that Eco Farm conference all those years ago, one thing I learned, I actually met many of the people that were instrumental in writing the organic code with the federal government in the 70s. They were saying how it doesn't work anymore. Now it's just a bureaucracy got a hold of it and it doesn't work. It's counterproductive now. So anyway, you know, the thing with permaculture, it's relationship. Everything is in relationship to the next thing, which is happening all the time. Yeah. But why not design that into the system, you know? Why not consider the orientation of your house?
Yeah.
Where you're putting the windows and, you know, how you can store heat in that way. And it just seems disrespectful for the abundance that we're given on this planet to not use the solar energy of the sun to heat. I mean, that solarium, you know, I mean, I got really lucky when I got this house.
It's nice and toasty in there.
So the guy that built this house, it was coming off the heels of the energy crisis, and I mean, this is the coolest house I've ever been in our city. Yeah. And it was because of the love of this guy and, you know, young man probably building his first house, you know. And it's a really cool house, but the utilities are extremely low on this house.
Right.
Because of it.
I love it. And kind of winding down, what one piece of advice or something that you've learned would you share with a young entrepreneur or a young person getting started in business? You've already shared a lot of things with us, so there's value, a lot of value here, but is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would say to them?
If you feel like you don't know what you're doing, nobody else does either. So you're in really good company.
I think we can all relate to that. Awesome. Couple quick fun questions as we wrap up. I know you love to travel. You've been around the world and all kinds of places. What's some of your favorite places that you've been to? Like where, if you got time off in 2 weeks and you can leave for a month, where's Dee going?
Oh my gosh, well, it would have to be back over to Ireland, where I went for the first time. And you know, because of our work, I always would only travel in the winter time, so I'd be down in the southern hemisphere. So yeah, I would definitely go back to Ireland. I love the Yucatan. I've been everywhere in the Yucatan. That was my place. I would just go and rent a car and check out every tiny little village I could, you know, hang out in with the Maya down there. Yeah, those are my places, but there are many that I want to go.
And what are some of the things that you love to do? I know you love to read, you love to travel. What are some other things if a summer day, let's say it's a summer day and Dee's got time and doesn't have to deal with work, where am I going to find you?
I do love to read. I love painting like house inside the house. I love that. And listening to podcasts. I love dining actually too with good friends. I love dining long coursed meals and love that.
Awesome. So I've never had a conversation with Dee that I didn't walk away learning something and just feeling, I don't know, I appreciate you and your efforts and what you've done for the city and for me, just as a friend. I can't say enough good things about Dee and what she's created here, about her company. I mean, you can just tell as you listen to her talk how much she cares about what she's doing, how much she's focused on the bigger picture. And I think it's really inspiring. So Dee, thanks for letting me crash your house and taking an hour with me.
Rob, it has been so fun. I always love talking with you. You know, we hijack our schedules and stand on the side of the street for an hour and a half talking.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you guys. That's Dee Downing. I will have a link below in the notes, a little bit about our company. Thank you for checking out this episode, and I'll see you on the next show. Everything